Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tenpenny Files. I'm your host, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny. You know, the Tenpenny Files isn't just another podcast. I hold daily discussions with guests whose research has been silenced or has been censored. We talk about discussions that will challenge the mainstream narrative and will challenge a lot of the things that you've already been told and will make you think. Topics span the spectrum from national government and history, astronomy and travel, to food and fitness, and health policy, and vaccines. And we talk to authors who write about faith and biblical principles. I want to introduce you to topics that you've never thought about reading or learning about before, or to things that you wish that you had time to dig deeper into and further explore. This show is meant to jumpstart your interest and give you guidance as to more places where you can look to dive deeper into these topics. When listeners are ready to question the narratives they've been told, the Tenpenny Files is the show for you. Join me here every day, Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern, to hear from authors and documentary filmmakers who have something important to say, who've been silenced and censored. But before I introduce you to today's guest, I want to introduce you and encourage my listeners to join our podcast membership. That supports what we do, and it gives you lots of great information, a monthly white paper, a recorded presentation, and an expert master class once a month. Go to primembership.drtenpenny.com to learn more about the membership and hopefully to join and support what we do. Today's conversation is with my guest, Patrick Wood, to talk about his book, Technocracy Rising, the Trojan Horse of Global Transformation, the book that connects the dots of modern globalization in a way that has never been seen before, exposing the global endgame, which is scientific dictatorship. Patrick, welcome to the Tenpenny Files. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
I'm really glad to be with you for sure. I haven't talked to you in a while, and we're due.
Absolutely. Start with something obvious and straightforward. What's technocracy? And is it a political system or an economic system?
There you go. This is the question of the ages at this point. Technocracy is an economic system, not a political system at all. This is why it's greatly misunderstood almost by everybody. It's not a political system, it's an economic system. And I'll tell you why. We'll explore this a little bit. But this is how they describe themselves in the 1930s, believe it or not, when technocracy as a movement was big in America and Canada as well. But they had a magazine called the Technocrat. That's an original magazine, right? This is how they described themselves in that day. This is just verbatim. Technocracy is the science of social engineering. They let out with that. We'll talk about that. The scientific operation of the entire social mechanism to produce and distribute goods and services to the entire population. For the first time in human history, it will be done as a scientific, technical, engineering problem. Then the definition continues. There will be no place for politics, politicians, finance, or financiers. Technocracy will distribute by means of a certificate of distribution available to every citizen from birth to death. This is a comprehensive economic system. You almost can't call it an economic system. A system implies give and take. There's a one-way trip here, basically. They will control humanity, and humanity, apparently they'll love their servitude, I guess. But this is a very dystopian view of the world, in my opinion. But this is started in the first place at Columbia University. Whatever came out of Columbia University that was really good, I don't think anything, but the scientists and engineers at Columbia University in 1932, they took it upon themselves to recreate or create from scratch an economic system based on resource management, and people are resources as well, science of social engineering. They thought they could do better than our free market economic system. They wanted to do away with the price-based economic system. They wanted to get rid of all politicians. And they figured, well, they have the science, they have the engineering chops. Uh, there's no need for political discourse. So they wanted FDR to declare himself dictator and just dismiss Congress altogether and appoint technocrats top to bottom to run the whole country by fiat, by scientific fiat. This sounds crazy, but you fast forward what's going on today, it's back. It's been back for a long time. This has been in the making for almost 100 years, from 1932 to today. And it's very draconian. It's very dystopian. It's absolutely crazy. It's absolutely anti-American, anti-human, anti-civilization, you name it. Um, but this is the beast that we're facing today.
So who is the they that they got together? Who were these people? And where did they get this concept that they were the ones who could rule the world?
You know, that's a good question. I don't know why Columbia University in particular, there was other universities in that day, obviously, that were prestigious. Um, why them? Well, Columbia has always kind of been the seat of progressive ideas. They were kind of on that wave at that point, and I can't say that it was one person that say, "Hey, let's all get all these departments together and create a new economic system." I don't know if it was like that. Maybe they just realized that wait, they can do it, so why don't we just go ahead and do it? Um,
And billionaires, or did they have the backing of money?
no, no, they didn't. Not at that point, they didn't. Yeah. You would think somebody like the Rockefellers would have stepped in, the Carnegies, somebody like that would have stepped in to finance them, but they didn't get any finance at all. There's probably some reasons for that. I won't go into it all right a second, but they didn't get any money, and when they actually get the whole movement got kicked out of Columbia University after a fraud was discovered. The leader of the movement, Howard Scott, he said he had a PhD or something in scientific engineering somewhere along the way. They discovered he didn't. He basically was a tradesman, but he passed himself off as an expert, whatever. Well, that didn't fly very well with Columbia because they're all the eggheads there. So they threw the whole bunch out. But they started on their own after that as Technocracy Incorporated. They formed a membership organization where you could pay dues, you could be invited to the meetings to discuss technocracy, and off to the races they were. There was over 500,000 card carrying members, dues paying members in the United States, believe it or not, mostly in the West, but it was all over the country. It was big in Canada as well. And just by coincidence, Elon Musk's grandfather was the grand poobah of the Canadian group of Technocracy Inc.
Wow.
He was steeped in it. He actually got arrested at one point because they thought he was a fascist, whatever, and so he he got out of that charge. But nevertheless, technocracy was a big thing in Canada. So we see a family lineage just by coincidence, perhaps, but Elon Musk exhibits all the traits of his grandfather, Dr. Joshua Haldeman. He wasn't an MD, by the way. He was a chiropractor. So you just go figure.
The organization Technocracy Inc., does it still exist?
It does.
And does it still have 500,000 card carrying?
No, no, it's minuscule at this point, and it's faded out of existence basically when the American public got a wind of what they were trying to do. They said no, we're not going to do this, so they diminished greatly. However, when David Rockefeller and Zbigniew Brzezinski got together in 1973 to form the Trilateral Commission, that was my first expertise, by the way, talking about writing about the Trilateral Commission in the 70s. David Rockefeller knew that Brzezinski had just written a book a couple of years earlier called Between Two Ages, America's Role in the
Mm.
Technotronic era. He was looking forward to a time like we have right now. And it's just so happened that Brzezinski was a professor of political science at Columbia University when he wrote the book. Well, Rockefeller got the idea maybe he could use Brzezinski's ideology of technocracy to capture the resources of the world for himself, the resources directly. He had a lot of money because he's a banker. He was a chairman of Chase Manhattan at that time. He had lots of money, but he knew that money at some point would be obsolete, and he wanted to get his hands on the resources directly: the land, the oil, the gold mines, the farming, the timber, everything they could that somehow they could get away from the people. He wanted to have it for himself and for the elite group of people that he invited into the Trilateral Commission in the first place. That's where the institutional money flowed in. Rockefeller poured everything that he had into technocracy at that point. So that what they said in the 1973, they wanted to create a new international economic order. It was all over their literature. It was not hidden, but nobody knew what does new mean. That's crazy to think that, but what's new? They never said there was technocracy at that point. They said, no, we're just gonna go out and create a new international economic order. That means global, international, global. What do we have today? A global system based on resource management, sustainable development, Agenda 21, technocracy, AI, you name it. We have this new economic system that everybody's scratching their head right now. What does this mean? And this is where it came from. Rockefeller set it up to
Well,
give to pass it off to the United Nations, which he did successfully. The UN was very much in the pockets of the Rockefeller family. They always have been. The land that the UN is built on right now in New York City, that was donated by the Rockefeller family in the first place to the United Nations to build that facility. So it was easy for him to say, hey guys, I have an idea here. Will you take our ideology of technocracy, the technotronic era, and we want you to put this in stone to take it to the world, not just in America, but take it to the whole world, and good luck. So you see, after 9 months of operation of the Trilateral Commission in 1973, in early 74, the United Nations passed a general resolution stating that they were going to create a new international economic order, same language, same exact language. And nobody had a clue what they were talking about. I didn't at that point, didn't have a clue. But we can look backwards now and say, oh, I see where it started. All this business with global warming and Agenda 21 and a 2030 agenda and the new urban agenda, all this other good do-gooder stuff coming out of the United Nations to control everybody in the world. This is where it came from, out of the pocketbooks of the Trilateral Commission.
well, this corporate takeover has been gradually coming along for all of these years.
Mm.
Is it really a betrayal of America? And has this technocracy really taken over all the elements of our government?
At this point, they really have. In the 1970s, the Trilateral Commission was very visible to the American people, mostly because Jimmy Carter, president back then, 76, he was a member of the Trilateral Commission. His vice president, Walter Mondale, he was a member also. And Carter brought into his cabinet all the members of the Trilateral Commission from the United States. There, except for one, all of his members of the cabinet were members of the Trilateral Commission. That was unprecedented. And so they were visible for a time, but they said they weren't interested in politics at all. What they wanted to do was to get this business of the new international economic order done. So what better place to do it other than to capture the economic engine of the world was the United States at that point. Well, they went they took a dive like a submarine. They went underground for a time after the 1980. And at this point, they did their business along the way, but at this point, all of a sudden, all these arch technocrats in Washington, D.C. have surfaced en masse, just like they did in the 1970s. Now we see they're all over Washington, D.C., taking over every single agency that they can get their hands on at this point. And yes, it is a total betrayal of the American people. It doesn't matter if you're conservative, liberal, Christian, Buddhist. It doesn't matter. If you're an American citizen, you're being betrayed by this group of people that are prosecuting technocracy on us in America, and they're all also intending to spread it to the entire world at this point.
Well, how does it impact health freedom? What does it do with our health going forward?
Yes. I'm so glad you asked that. I am. I've talked to health groups and like AAPS groups and about health issues, medical issues, especially as it relates to AI. At this point, I'll put it this way. The Make America Healthy initiative in the first place, the MAHA movement, there's been probably some good things that have come out of that at this point. I don't want to throw cold water on the whole thing. However, along the way, this new idea came along called MABA, MABA, Make America Biotech Accelerants.
Wow.
Okay, so what was proposed by Secretary Kennedy himself? He wants all Americans by the end of 2026. Everyone in America should be wearing a medical device to collect information on your body.
You
Just
know, a lot of controversy about that statement that he made. Be-
yes,
and I've known Secretary Kennedy slash Bobby for a long
yes,
like 20 years. And, there have been things, because so many people jumped on that with him saying that
yeah,
everyone needs to be wearing a wearable. And, he kind of came back and said he spoke out of turn, and that's really not what he meant. And then people said, well, I'm never going to do that. I don't want to have that in my life. And then there's this, some of the wearables really, they're for your personal information, but they don't transmit information. So there's been confusion about that. And then there's been confusion about, did he say it or was he put up to it?
yes,
Putting
yes.
it As so many people have felt like he's doing a good job within a very narrow window of what he's being allowed to do.
Hmm.
What perspective on that whole concept in general?
You have to figure people often do things that they don't want to do. However, they get into that corner to where they're forced to do it, it may be different at different times. But I think this is probably one of those times. I don't think he had that mindset before he was nominated to be the Secretary of Health in the first place. But somehow somebody got to him or say, "Hey, this is a great idea. We have to make America biotech um, accelerant. The word accelerant is based on an ideology floating around the tech bro world in Washington, D.C. This speaks of accelerationism. This is the philosophy of technology. Basically, it says that you have to move fast enough, let technology run its course, if you will, until it starts to break stuff, and then you put the pieces back together again. This is a crazy philosophy, but people like what was his name, Mark Andreessen. He was at the table when President Trump was selecting all these people in the first place as an advisor. He's been promoting accelerationism all of his career, basically. That's crazy. That's crazy talk, in my opinion. You don't want to accelerate technology until it starts break things, and But this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to accelerate technology. Data centers, for instance. Why do we have to have all these data centers all of a sudden? Why is there a panic to get the data centers established all over the country, regardless of how many lives it runs over? Well, you see this if they can't be accelerating, they think they're not successful. So this was part of the sweep, if you will, that I think that came up in the first place when Trump came into office. All these tech bros were already in place, and of course they would say, "Well, what we need to do here is collect more information on American citizens. We have to have sensors in place everywhere in society, so that we can make sense of all the data and turn it around to manipulate people." I think this is the force du jour that the technocrats have exercised on everybody in Washington, D.C. Ones that want to play ball with them, ones that don't. But at this point, it just shows you how much power they have at this point to force their way, their will, to get their ideology into the public mind.
Well, the wearables really are a problem if they are totally doing data collection. You
I
know,
know.
because
Yes.
healthcare is the new oil. Healthcare data is the new oil.
Yes.
Really going to be a real problem and it's going to be a problem to get people, force people to wear it on top of things. And
I don't think they're going to be very successful. I know a lot of people will not do it. I won't. I've talked to a lot of people said, "Nah, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in Fitbit or any other thing that tracks me at that level." But hey, we still have our smartphones, and it somehow they can sense. I was on a walk one day when I didn't have this feature turned off apparently, but all of a sudden I got a ding on my smartphone. It says, "Oh, you're on. I can see you're on a walk. Do you want to know how many steps you took?" I said, "No, I don't want to know that." I turned it off very, very quickly. I found out where that setting was. But there's there's passive collection of data, and then there's active collection of data. Does it really need to know how many steps I took in a day?
well,
No.
the way that they could sort of force people to do this is they have to tie it to something of value. Like if you wear a Fitbit or something equivalent to a Fitbit or wearable type of data, and we can keep your blood sugar stable.
Yes.
It will, if you don't do it, you won't be entitled to health insurance. If you do it and your numbers stay within the predetermined range, then
Yes.
you'll get a 5 or a 10% discount. If you go to the gym and you spend so many minutes a week at the gym, you can get a discount on your health insurance because of moving things forward. They will tie it to some sort of an incentive, and the incentive will vacillate between a carrot and a stick, of what they
Yes.
do. So this is really not a good position that we've got our whole country and everything in tech in place. But I do think that this is a good place for us to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. So hold that thought. We're going to hear quickly from our sponsors at AmericaOutloud.news. America Out Loud Radio Network plays the Tenpenny Files on the iHeartRadio daily at 3 p.m. Eastern. You can also listen anywhere in the world if you go to the AmericaOutloud.news media player. If you've missed any of these great conversations on the Tenpenny Files, you can find them on Spotify, Pandora, Apple, TuneIn, iHeart Virtual Studio, and on my platforms, dr10penny.com. You can click on the podcast tab and you can listen to them there, or you can join my Substack, which is free, to go to dr10penny.substack.com. Because there are so many great books and documentaries and so real little time to read and to watch all of these great things, this show is meant to maximize your time and spur your interest and jumpstart you into locations where you can find more information. Sit tight. We will be right back with more with Patrick Wood on his book, Technocracy Rising, the Trojan Horse of Global Transformation. We'll be right back.
Zeolite is a detox spray. We work specifically with a company called Touchstone Essentials. They are an incredible company. We've been working with them now for several years. And zeolite is a mineral that goes through your body like a one-way basket. It will clean out heavy metals such as arsenic and mercury, aluminum, cadmium, and it hooks onto those metals from a one-way perspective. So once it's bound, it goes out through your urine or your stools and doesn't get redeposited in other places. Everybody needs to have a detox product in their life, and this one is so easy to use and it's so safe. You can take it when you're pregnant, you can take it when you're nursing, you can give it to little children, you can even give it to infants, and quite frankly, I give it to my dog. I actually put a little bit of the zeolite in his water because until we all stop living in a toxic world, we all need to get some of those extra toxicities out. The heavy metals, the persistent organic pollutants, the things that are floating through the air, the different things that we come in touch with in our environment. And we are a big fan of zeolite from Touchstone Essentials. We've been a big fan of their products for several years. Go to dr10penny.com/detox to get your first bottle of zeolite spray for $50 off.
Well, only when the government bows to the people will America become great again. This is Malcolm Out Loud here. Join me in pushing back against censorship, my fellow Americans. Right at the top of AmericaOutloud.news are the words: many voices, one freedom, united in the First Amendment. Now is our time, my fellow Americans. AmericaOutloud.news, liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome back, everyone. Today, our conversation is with Patrick Wood and his important book, Technocracy Rising, the Trojan Horse of Global Transformation, the book, the #1 book that connects the dots of modern globalization and exposing the global endgame. Let me tell you just a little bit more about today's guest, Patrick Wood. Patrick states he is an economist by education, a financial analyst, and a writer by profession, and an American constitutionalist by choice. I just love that whole summary of who he is. Patrick maintains a biblical worldview by researching the attacks on sovereignty, property rights, and personal freedom. He's the leading expert in the elitist Trilateral Commission, their policies that created the new international economic order and the core of global sustainability programs. And for the listener, every time you hear that word sustainability, don't think about, isn't that great for the world? Think about how bad that is because it's coming from the UN and the World Health Organization. Put that in boxer and remember that word, sustainability. He's a frequent speaker on technocracy, transhumanism, and scientism, and how these are transforming global economics, politics, and religion. Patrick, your book, Technocracy Rising, the Trojan Horse of Global Transformation, you talk about the looming impact of transhumanism. Tell us your perspective and your Christian worldview on what's happening with transhumanism.
You bet. You bet. I have several books after Technocracy Rising. I have my second book was called Technocracy: The Hard Road to World Order. My third book was called the evil twins of technocracy and transhumanism.
Wow.
This was in a few years ago at this point, but technocracy and transhumanism had been identified as having merged together as an ideology. It makes a lot of sense if you understand the elements of both. You see why they got together in the first place. But fast forward to the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, when he said he's talking about the fourth industrial revolution. He said, we're going to have a big reset for one thing, economic reset. But he said, we're also going to have a merger of technology into the human condition. That's basically transhumanism, where we will end up being post-human at some point, maybe even conquering death itself. Well, they think that death is just like a disease. It's like having cancer. That's something that should be conquered. So when Klaus Schwab says in the same breath, we're creating a new economic world, reset world, but we're going to put, if you will, engineered people into this new world to populate this new world. That was a concept of transhumanism in a nutshell. Ultimately, for the sake of escaping death. But in the meantime, there's lots of other challenges like life extension. People like Jeff Bezos, Amazon, Elon Musk, other arch technocrats, billionaire technocrats, they've all collectively poured hundreds of millions of dollars into startup companies they're called collectively life extension companies, research companies. And most of them have the ultimate goal of punching through life extension to the extent that death can be conquered altogether. This is the problem for most Christians. You might imagine, no, if you understand your Bible, Hebrews is very clear. It's appointed to man once to die, and then comes judgment. So they're not going to be successful. Nevertheless, they're pouring all this money into it, and they're dragging people by the busload into this movement at this point to conquer death. I was on a show recently where the thought was brought up by my co-author, Courtney Turner, on my latest book, which is The Final Betrayal, that these people, the thing that drives them is the fear of hell. You have to think about this for a minute. If anybody wants to escape death, they're concerned what might be on the other side. Yes. And it seems to me that people innately, God has put this understanding in people. Yes, you were created, and you have to stand before your creator in the end and be accountable for what you did on planet Earth. This is the concept, I think. And I think that's probably a good way to think what drives these people other than death itself, but what's on the other side of death is the expectation of hell if you don't cut it on planet Earth in the first place, and you reject Jesus Christ as the answer for death. So, this is kind of complicated, but it's not for a Christian to understand what's driving these people. Well, I think this in a nutshell, this is it.
So where does AI come into this? I've done a lot of research on AI. I've had several guests on AI, and I have multiple guests that are coming up because I believe that we are at a critical juncture when it comes to
Yes.
that. It's on the one hand, it's kind of a runaway train in industry that if anybody, the way I understand it, and what I've heard in the podcasts I've listened to, is like if any one of the big guys in big industry, the Fortune 200 companies, if any one of them say, wait a minute, maybe we ought to think this through, they've just moved to the back of the pack because everybody else is running full fledged ahead. And the rest of us that don't really understand the ethics and the problem of what's coming with AI are just, we're okay with playing around with Chat GPT and Grok and, some of these other Genesis, Gemini, and some of these other ones. And we think it's okay and we use it for different things. But I think that where the paradigm is moving forward isn't all butterflies and roses. It's really potentially to be a very dark sort of future with what's going to control us. And I think that might have something to do with what you talk about with dark enlightenment. And it's two things separate. I really want you to talk about the AI thing first.
Absolutely. The AI is nothing more than a control mechanism for humanity at this point. It's been sold as a companion, somebody to talk to. It's been sold as a research tool, maybe the way to automate your house or something convenient. But in the end of it, the main aspect of AI is to control humanity. And let me just back out for a minute. The concept of data, there's a theory of data, put it this way, that data is collected from something, either people, in inanimate objects or whatever, the stars or whatever. You collect data. Data then is used to analyze the object from which it was collected from in the first place, right? If I collect on you and information on you, I'm going to analyze what you're all about. But then the nature of data is that the only reason you do that in the first place is to control the object from which it was collected in the first place. Think about your budget. You have a program that does your accounting for you, for instance. You put all your data in it. You don't do it just for good looks. You do it because you want to find out where you are. You want to analyze your statistics, your trends, your expenses. Am I going to run out of money or whatever? So you use the data that you collect yourself to monitor your behavior and change your behavior if you deem that's appropriate, right? So the data is connected to your behavior. So in the same way, all data collected anywhere in the world, data is collected for the sake of analyzing everything that it was collected from in the first place in order to turn around and manipulate that thing from which it was collected in the first place. So if you see how the technocrats think here, why do they have to have AI at this point that's sucking up all the world's data? Everything on the internet has been scrubbed. And all of the collection devices now, like the Internet of Things, the sensors in cities and streets and buildings, and now the Internet of Bodies with all the information that they want to collect from. Why do they need all this data? Well, they're lusting over this data. Literally, they're lusting over the data of the world. And in their mind, there's no such thing as having not enough data. They want all the data and they want more. So at this point, why all of a sudden are these data centers popping up all over the country? You have to ask the question, why do we need all these data centers? Is it just to run Grok so you can get an answer to tech support problem? No. These systems are being set up for control mechanisms to control every aspect of life, at least in our country, maybe the whole planet at some point.
In these AI centers, these data centers that they're setting up, they're huge.
They're huge. People can't understand. And let's go to one.
Like 5 football fields big, 100 yards,
Yes.
500 yards, and sucking up all the energy and all the water and all the things that are, around the areas that they're doing this. And there's many of them. I mean, how much data is there that we need this many data centers?
That's a great question. How much data is there in the world? Well, there's no limit to the amount of data collected. Well, at least in their mind, when you get down to taking information off of people, especially, how much data can you accumulate even yourself, considering that all of your body functions, all of your body characteristics, all of your hormones, the way your body does all it expresses epigenetics facets. How about your DNA, your RNA, all that mechanism that makes you you? How much data would that be? Well, that's a lot of data. They don't have all that data right now. They'd like to have it. That's kind of what MABA is all about. But they're collecting DNA now and putting that in your profile. And once that can be analyzed, that's a gold mine for them.
They have a program that's been set up. It's being funded by the NIH. It's being trialed in the state of Florida.
Yeah.
I think it's 300,000 babies are going to be put into this program where they will do complete genomic sequencing
Yes.
at the time of birth. And they're going to do this over a 3-year period of time. And they're collecting this data not necessarily to look at the genetic profile of these babies or to look for inborn errors of metabolism or any of those things. The main point of this research that they're doing is how accepting are the mothers of putting their child's data and their data into the
Yes.
database. It's more of a way, kind of how they have done all these studies over the years to look at vaccine resistant parents. I mean, what is it that makes them so resistant to the concept of vaccines? I want to see whether these parents are going to think this is a good idea. They're going to be resistant. Then they're going to figure out programs to get the mothers to overcome this resistance of putting everyone's DNA into a centralized database. And speaking of centralized database, I want to ask you, what is your perspective on the Trump's administration of having this executive order to having AI centralized in the country? What are your thoughts about that?
The most dangerous thing that we've ever done in our history of our country.
Wow.
It really is. Yeah. You might remember, by the way, when Larry Ellison stood up with Sam Altman, President Trump, Massa from, I can't remember the name of the company, but he's an investment company guy. Larry Ellison, the founder of Oracle, stood up. He's not a doctor, not hardly, but he made this amazing statement that AI is going to excel to the point where it'll be able to analyze your entire DNA makeup and make recommendations for you personally to have your genes edited so you won't get certain cancers later in life. He said that flat out, one-on-one, 101. AI will be able to analyze you personally, and then they'll create a shot for you based on the predictions that you're going to get some cancer later. Really, this is one-on-one an assessment of your condition. And if they find that you have this propensity to get some type of a cancer, they're going to give you a specially designed shot just for you. Well, okay, the implications of this are if AI omniscient as it is, they think it is, if AI says you're going to get this cancer, it's in your cards, if you will, right? It's in your stars. And you're going to get this cancer if you refuse the treatment. If you say, no, I don't believe that. What's going to happen to you at that point? You're going to be exited out of the health system because they say you're a troublemaker. You don't believe AI at this point. You won't accept. And then if you get it later on, don't think you're going to get coverage from society. You'll just be dead on the spot. This is the implication of doing this predictive type of analysis. It's almost like pre-crime software that police agencies are used. There's no crime committed yet, but they're sure that you're going to do something and they're watching you, sort of thing, so to speak. This same concept with using AI to predict your future and then prescribing stuff for you to do right now. And if you don't do it, you're going to have dings on your record for the rest of your life. This is crazy.
Part of this study that they're doing in Florida, and on our show on the Tenpenny Files, I interviewed Leah Wilson, who's the head of the CEO of Stand for Health Freedom, who has dug this up and has become a champion of the fact that if we do this DNA sequencing on newborn babies, and they say, oh, when you're 60, you're going to get Huntington's chorea or some terrible type of disease like that. But we can do gene editing on you now that won't happen. How much is it going to cost? What is that going to do for the future of it, like education and jobs? And will you be able to get insurance? Will you be considered high risk there? What are all the ramifications of this? Which is another way that AI and this movement of AI, who believing that AI is infallible and it's perfect, which it's not, is kind of directing our future for us. Is this thing out there that this that's becoming more and more sentient. I've listened to some of the things where it's actually even it writes its own code to prevent the person from shutting them down and turning it off. So it's becoming self-thinking and self-aware. The centralization, you said that's happening in DC, you said it's the worst thing that's ever happened. Why do you think the centralization is so bad?
Well, for one, it's not controlled by the government. It's controlled by these arch technocrats who've marched into government. They're the ones controlling the technology, not the government. Our Congress doesn't have a clue what's going on. They really don't understand what's going on with these tech bros. They're going. Say again.
Nor do they seem to want to understand.
Maybe I don't know. I can't speak for all of them, but some of them might be sincerely just ignorant. I mean, when you have so much on your plate all the time, it's hard to get up to speed. I understand that. It happens to me all the time. Probably you too. You miss stuff. I just didn't have time. Whatever. You didn't get educated on it. Well, that can be rectified in Washington, D.C. with Congress, for instance. If they did get educated, they'd be aghast of what's going on and where the whole thing is headed. If they understood what this dark enlightenment was about in the first place, this is such an evil, twisted ideology. It's believed by all these people, like Peter Thiel, for instance, the co-founder of Palantir. He's a big player in this whole thing. Elon Musk, Kratsios, Mark Andreessen he's in the mix as well. People like that in Washington, D.C. This is their philosophy now. Okay, number one, they feel that democracy is not suitable for society anymore, so they want to create a monarchy in America, get rid of the office of president, not be elected. They want to appoint a CEO type person to run the country like a startup organization from Silicon Valley. How's that going to work out? They want basically to dismiss all the politicians and let them run the whole country in the first place. This is crazy. They talk about for instance, when Doge came into Washington D.C. under kind of Elon Musk's tutelage, they fired all these people in government, mostly the gatekeepers of the data, but they fired these people according to a doctrine of the Dark Enlightenment that was created by Curtis Yarvin, by the way. He's another entrepreneur, tech type from Silicon Valley. The RAGE was the acronym, Retire All Government Employees. Rage. It was all, you go look for that word, you see it all over the newspaper. They never said where that came from. Rage was a doctrine that got all these people fired, and they're still firing people in Washington, D.C. The people that make the system work in the first place, because they're replacing those people and those functions with AI.
You know, Patrick, we've gone, sadly, I wish we had another 2 hours to have this conversation, because there's so much to talk about. We have like 1 minute left. So 1 minute closure. What do you want to leave our audience with here today?
Get informed. Go to technocracy.news. You see my books there. Go to Amazon. All my books are there. Audiobooks, Kindle version, the paperback book. Get it. Start getting educated on what's going on. My latest book, I don't know if no, that won't show correctly. My latest book, The Final Betrayal, How Technocracy Destroyed America. This is a big one for sure.
Well, Patrick Wood, thank you so much for everything that you do. And tell people your website again, where they can go and get these resources.
Technocracy.news, not .com, but .news.
Well, I'm telling you, Patrick's information is just over the moon. And I'm going to start having at least once a month AI and technocracy sort of discussion here on the 10 Penny Files, because it's so hot and it's so in the news and it's taking over our lives and people don't even realize it. So we're going to be doing much more of that here on this show, because I think it's really, really important to get people to realize what's happening. So while we still have time to intercede with consciousness, with making decisions, with resistance of what you're going to do and not going to do, it's really, really an important segment. So with that happy thought, we're going to close with a happy thought, which is, I close all of my podcasts with one of my favorite verses from the Bible, which is Romans 12:12, rejoice in hope, be patient in trouble, and be persistent in prayer. We'll see you tomorrow right here at 3 p.m. Eastern on AmericaOutloud.news or iHeartRadio or any of your podcast platforms that you subscribe to, or you can find us at dr10penny.com and dr10penny.substack.com. We will see you tomorrow or the next time right here on the 10 Penny Files. Goodbye, everybody. Have a good day. Goodbye, and God bless.